Hi there, good evening, and welcome to the Four Lads Had a Dream Sunday show right across the Four Lads podcast network. My name's Scott Patterson, and good to be back after quite a refreshing Easter break. And yeah, looking forward to trying to get through the next 45 minutes to an hour with absolutely zero Rangers content over the weekend to speak about. So bear with us, we will get there. If you want to get involved in the comments, and of course, as usual, you can. If you've got any cues, we will do our very best to them. I don't know. If you want to get involved in the comments, then you're more than welcome to do that. Of course, you are. Before we get into it, we should say a big thank you and a hello in the first instance to our sponsors for the season: Rhino Express, Cloudview Joinery, Athol Industrial Solutions, CSD Air Conditioning, Art of Gold, Black Rooster, and our good friends across at Candid. We have a full house tonight. Sheryl, how the devil are you?
Do you know what? For a woman who's heading back to work after 2 lovely long weeks off, I'm actually doing all right. Rangers did not trash my holidays, so that's all we can ask for these days, I think. We're still there, we're still in it, and I know we'll talk about it tonight, but I'm good, thanks. Lovely to be with you, three handsomes.
Thank you very much. Dougie, how are you doing?
I'm all right. I was going to say suitably refreshed, but as refreshed as you possibly can be going away on a week's holiday with the family, which involves a 5-year-old. But as Sheryl said, we're in a positive mindset at the moment. You know, Rangers haven't ruined this weekend. We signed off before the break with a win, so feeling good, Scotty. Feeling good.
So, Dougie, before I am going to go to Rob in a second, but and it's important that it doesn't turn into a doing on you, Dougie. As you know, I do my very, very best to try and avoid that. However,
here we go. What now?
Did you post a selfie of you in a boat when you were away? Or was
Did you not see my selfie?
Well, aye.
What are you saying about my selfie?
No, nothing whatsoever. What was it all about?
So, do you know, I just love doing random stuff. And for years, I've been trying to convince my wife, kids, whoever, to go on a boat. Like, to actually... So I got corrected on Instagram by saying driving a boat. Apparently, you don't drive a boat. I don't give a fuck what you do. I steered a boat and I pushed up to go forward. But the kids came on with me, and actually, do you know what? They absolutely loved it, because we were in Lake Windermere. We were out on the lake, and do you know the best thing about it, right? Because obviously I'm driving my boat happy as Larry, pressing up and steering. I'm doing donuts in an electric boat. It's going 5 miles an hour, so the kids are thinking I'm mental, right? But the best thing about it is Lake Windermere is actually on the path for all the fighter jets. So we're out on the lake, and literally every 5 minutes there's a fighter jet like coming across the top of us. And it was the coolest thing ever. See, for a 41-year-old man who was there with my 2 girls and my wife, like, I was in my element. I'm driving a boat, or whatever you call it, right, with fighter jets going over me. It was the best. And then after that, right, I went to a pub called the Hole in the Wall. So anyone that knows the Lake District and Lake Windermere, I was recommended this bar called the Hole in the Wall. Yeah. 1612 it opened, and it says that Charles Dickens drank in there. And as my very clever 8-year-old daughter said, how has anyone get any proof that Charles Dickens has drunk in this pub before? Because she said the local pub could just say Taylor Swift drank here, and it could become the new fad of all the pubs to drink in the area of Glasgow. And nobody would ever know, none the wiser. But I'm sure social media would say otherwise these days. But who can prove that Charles Dickens did or did not drink in the Hole in the Wall in Lake Windermere?
It's only right that I'm going to go to Rob next, because I'm almost sure, before he says how well he's been and how good his break has been, he's going to give you absolute pelters for being the shitest James Bond known to man. Rob, am I right?
No. To be fair, I'm actually going to be nice for a change and not even mention anything like that, because I actually like Dougie's wife and kids. So I'm not going to pelt up a family
Dougie
holiday this time.
Dougie, give or take him.
I was going to say, just like Dougie was too interested in piloting or driving his boat, that his kids and wife were nearly hanging out while he was doing these donuts, and he didn't realise they'd went overboard. So.
5 miles an hour. I kid you not, I could go no faster than 5 miles an hour.
My goodness. Rob, how are you?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. Didn't do anything exciting like Dougie has done over the last week, like driving or piloting or captaining a boat, but yes, it's been nice and chilled. Had a really good Sunday. Went and watched my wee nephew play football and stuff. So it was good. Always good, mate. Always good to be on with you guys as well.
So listen, you're all more than welcome, as always. If you are watching on X or YouTube, Facebook. I don't think we're available to watch on Instagram. Of course, we're on there. However, if you are getting involved in the chat tonight, by all means do that. And if there's anything of any relevance that we're happy to share that I can put to the panel, then we'll definitely do that. Rob, I'm going to stay with you because you strike me as being the guy in the group, this group that's on there now, who loves the holidays most than anyone else. The camp in Spain, good exercise or a bit of a meh exercise? Does it come at the right time? Does it prevent any momentum that we've got? Where are you with that?
I'll tell you at 5 p.m. on Sunday. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether you go to Spain or whether you go down south or whether you just stay in train in Auchenhowie for a week.
Yeah.
The only thing that matters is the result you get in the back of it. I think from a distraction point of view, it's a good thing to get the group away. Obviously, they are humans. They've got families. They maybe have kids running about and stuff like that as well. So for Danny to take the team away and allow them to focus on what they're going to have to do over the next five games, bond together as a bit of a group, because ultimately, we saw with the Rangers review interview with Tav, it's probably the first time where they've been able to have that time together as a group since pre-season. Yeah. And there's been a few new faces that have come in and joined the squad. But ultimately, it doesn't matter where you go, mate. It is all about the next result. And if we win, people will say it's a great idea. If we lose, people will say they should have stayed and trained in the hailstones and the rain and the wind. Ultimately, Danny's had good experience. I think he'd mentioned that he'd been part of a Bayern Munich team that had went and done it, and I think they'd been on to win the Champions League. So the proof's going to be in the pudding when they come back. I don't care where the players train, as long as they are fully focused on the job that they've got to do at hand in these next 5 games. That's the only thing that matters. They've got an opportunity to write themselves into the history books of Rangers, and I have no qualms in thinking that the manager knows that as well, and will be getting that across to them over that 5-day period when they're in Spain. Absolutely hope that they're working hard, but getting a bit of sun in the bones, allowing players who are injured to come back into a training environment that maybe isn't as hard going as it would be when it's here.
Yeah,
could only be a good thing. But it's how they apply themselves on Sunday, mate. If they still kick in holiday mode, everybody's going to be raging in that stadium. But if they're on it from minute 1 against Motherwell, everybody's going to be buzzing, because it's a really good thing to set us up for another 2 tough games after that.
Sheryl, we've obviously got, there's listeners, I think everyone understands there's a bit of scar tissue with these breaks previously, where we have been doing really quite well, hitting a bit of momentum at a really nice time and a pleasant time of the season, and then we go away for a very, very small period, and then it all goes to shit, for want of a better term or expression. So the scar tissue is obvious. So I think it's a fair question to think, God, did we need to do this? But I think it comes almost with how the season has turned almost in our favour to a degree.
Hey, do you know what? And believe it or not, as much as Rob likes his holidays, it's actually our holiday area of choice, San Pedro.
Right.
We were there in the summer, and we're heading there again this summer. So you can imagine my 10-year-old's absolute disgust and dismay that we're going in the summer and we're not going to Easter. And he has already asked me, will they be back in the summer? So I've lied and said, yeah, probably. No, I think I'm where you were, Scott, because I think we've done a few of these pods, and I know it's a slightly different thing, but after international breaks, where we've been doing fairly well, we've thought, right, the international breaks coming, we'll get a wee bit of rest, regroup, and then we've been lilling gish when we've come back from them. But I think for me, and Danny Rule, I trust. If he thinks it's a good thing, he's very methodical. I don't know if you guys caught much of the interview that the Rangers Review did with Raskin. Yeah. He's been singing his praises this week about how kind of calm and methodical he is and how kind of on the level he is. So for me, if he thinks this is a good idea, then I back him 100%.
Dougie, the obvious thing that I mentioned was momentum, and I think, let's be honest, this stage of the season, there's one thing you want to have, regardless of how your season's been, whether you've been dragged back into it, whether you have been in the sort of Hearts position where you've been top of the pile for a good wee while. It's important to have a bit of momentum going into these last 5 games of the season. In our instance, we're away from home, three of those 5. And is there a risk it could disturb the momentum that the guys have got up to this stage ahead of 5 cup finals, if you like?
It's a funny old season. You know, we spoke about this after the Falkirk game that we played. Yeah. We spoke about the word momentum, and for me, it's just about focusing on the next game. So Rob's absolutely bang on in terms of we'll only know the success or lack of once we play Motherwell of this trip. I tell you what, 45 minutes into that game against Falkirk, I'm saying cancel the trip to Spain right now. It's amazing how an extra 45 minutes completely changed my mind. And I was like, get these guys off to Spain, let them bond, because that's what this training session's all about. You know, I think historically when we've gone abroad to these training camps, it's always been about, you know, it's another pre-season before we go again, and it's about drilling the fitness into the players and so forth. It's not been about that for me this time. I think Danny Rule used his experience from Bayern Munich, and actually it's about team bonding. And I tell you something, going into what is 5 massive games, a large part of what's going to win you this league is the team spirit. So we'll know in 5 games' time whether it was successful or not. But I think my opinion's changed on this trip from when we last spoke, Scott. I think it's quite clever of the manager to get the team together. As Rob said, you know, for a lot of these guys have not been together because, you know, it was pre-season when they were last together. But even in the summer, there was players arrive after the pre-season camp and everyone had returned home. We had the four January signings. You've had international breaks, but with international breaks, you've had the internationalists go away with their countries. So it's actually been a great period to get the guys together. You know, Sheryl touched on the families at home. So this is an opportunity to get the guys together, to bond. I seen Gassama put something on Instagram about the winning team, and the players look happy. And for me, that's what this is all about, getting the guys together. There was in fact, it was under Russell Martin, wasn't it, where there was a planned bevy session, wasn't it? And you know the old phrase of a team that drinks together wins together. There was that planned bevy session that we obviously got beat, and Russell Martin in his wisdom decided to take them off skinny dipping in Loch Lomond. So hopefully the guys have been able to go out, get some sun, bit of a recharge, enjoy some sun, get some training under their belts, get some, as Rob said, get some of the guys back who are, you know, Romans. I'm thinking of, we really need guys like Romans in this team. Moore was carrying a rock before. Let's get these guys back up to speed, enjoying some sunshine, ready for Motherwell. But hopefully they've had a drink. Like, hopefully they've been bonding. It looks like they're happy. Gassama's post saying winning team, they all looked absolutely delighted. And, you know, the shock in there was Big Cornelius right in the middle, front and centre, with a big cheeser on. You know, is there going to be a surprise? I don't think so. I don't think there'll be any surprises come Motherwell with the starting 11. It'll be most likely the starting 11 that we think is our strongest 11 available. But I tell you, like, my mindset right now is every small margin helps. And if, you know, a few days in the sun, getting the guys together for a bit of team camaraderie, let's get them together. Let's get back. And let's get back to business on Motherwell, because it's imperative that we win that game and then kick on. Because I seen somebody said in the comments earlier on, you know, Rangers, it's not about, you know, we're aiming for 5 wins. At Rangers, we are the team that should be coming out here and winning the league. And it's up to the players now to go out and show it.
Yeah. Listen, I don't disagree. I think all these, I've said the sort of big thing for me is that it's probably the first opportunity that they've had to almost like bond properly. Do you know what I mean? They'll see each other at training every day. They'll see each other at match day, of course they will. But it'll maybe be the opportunity for them to actually know a little bit more about each other. You tend to forget that these footballers are doing their jobs exactly the same that you and I do our jobs for tomorrow onwards. So it'll be interesting to see how that week away, however long it's been, does affect.
You seen Drew's comment as well, saying that his sister went along to the camp to meet the players and was greeted by the Hearts team in a different camp over in Spain. So it's obviously not just us that's out doing a training camp just now, ready for the refresh to kick on again. Hearts must be doing it as well. The one thing I'd say, and it's a bit of a controversial one, I'd rather be playing a cup semi-final today, and I'd rather be in the final to be aiming for a double than being away in a training camp. But I do think of the two, going away in a recharge in a training camp, it potentially sets us up better for the recharge, ready to kick on again.
Yeah, listen, it'll be interesting to see what the not the fallout from it is. As I say, it's not a hot topic at all. I think from our previous experiences of those moments where maybe they go away to try and get away at the road for a wee while, our experience of it hasn't been that great. Sheryl, I did say at the start I was happy to entertain some questions, and Lainey, who is a regular watcher on YouTube, do we think Skov Olsen can show some of his qualities into the next 5 games to help us over the line? It's a biggie. I think it's important. I think if there is real design over getting him in on a permanent deal or a further loan deal for next season, the next 5 games for Skov Olsen are super, super important.
They are. Do you know what? And I know every fan base are, but we're so reactionary and we're so kind of making up our mind. I remember years ago, was it Juan Mama Ortiz? I remember the first game I watched him, I was like, he is... And my dad was like, no, give him time, don't be ridiculous. And as it turned out, it was one of the few occasions that I was right. I think what's difficult for Skov Olsen, if you look at Giga, for instance, right, or you look at Fernandez, they're 2 players. We didn't want Giga to come back from AFCON. We would be quite happy if he ended up getting stuck there. But look at him now. There is real conversations around, do we try and get him for 5 million? Is he worth 8 million? What's to happen with that? But unfortunately for Skov Olsen, he does not have that length of time that those players have had across the length of the season. And I have to say, barring some kind of miracle, I personally, I hope he does. I certainly hope he does, but I can't see it based on what we've seen of him so far. It's just dead unfortunate that he doesn't have the same time frame that the other players who've dramatically improved across the season have. But for me at the moment, I would love it. I don't think it's going to happen.
Scott, see on Skov Olsen, there's probably not a player, maybe Robbins and Moore, etc., that we touched on earlier on about coming back from injury and having that opportunity to get themselves back up to speed. But there's probably nobody who was fit and available who is going to benefit from this trip more than Andreas Skov Olsen. The opportunity is certainly there for him to benefit from this trip because he looks like a player who's low in confidence, a player who doesn't necessarily know how to play with the right back and play with his team. That's what this trip's all about. That team bonding spirit, getting to know your teammates, getting your confidence back, getting a wee kick on for the next 5 games. Hopefully, you touched on it, right? Like, if he goes out and plays a blinder for the next 5 games, you're having a different conversation because, as Sheryl said, there was moments in the season where we've written off other players. Asgard, for example, was written off as well. Asgard finished before this short break as one of the on-form players, but people had written Asgard off as well. So hopefully Skov Olsen is using this break as an opportunity to get himself up to speed, match fit, aware of his teammates, a bit more confident, and he's one of the players that can hopefully benefit from this when it comes to Motherwell.
I think the difference there though as well, Dougie, just on that point, is Asgard's had more than half a season to get to this point.
Yeah.
Skov Olsen doesn't have that. And when you come back, you've got 5 games, and the question I would ask, are you really going to start him over anybody else at the moment? Well, not. He's not a starter, Skov Olsen. The best that he can hope for is that he can impact the game from the bench. And that's where he needs to take his opportunity, because if he doesn't, he ain't signing for Rangers next season. And I wouldn't want us to be spending, the best part of 8 million quid on him because we haven't seen enough from him. That's not his fault that he's come here with an injury, needing to hit the ground running. Ultimately, it's just bad timing. But for me, like you, I think he's a player that's got real quality. I wish we'd have got him maybe a couple of seasons earlier. Sometimes it just doesn't work out. The only person that can have a real impact in that is going to be him when he does get his opportunity off the bench and he needs to be used. Ultimately, you've got a number of options potentially in front of him at the moment in that right-hand side. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens when we line up against Motherwell. But the great thing is that we're talking about quality in the positions. It's not just one player there. We're talking about options now, and that's what you need when you're getting into these next 5 games. If we've got somebody coming off the bench that can really change a game, that's going to be brilliant for us because we might need a little bit of a spark. And when's the last time, as a Rangers fan, we could really say that we've got multiple different options in multiple different positions where they can have that impact? It's brilliant for me.
And you're going to need those options, right? 5 games left. You're going to need the whole squad pulling together, chipping in. There'll be different games for different players and all that stuff. But see on the right-hand side, when you're saying about all the options, I don't want to see Gassama on the right. We waste Gassama when he's on the right. Gassama's better on the left. The issue there is that Moore holds the jersey right now. They are entirely different players. That's where Skov Olsen might get his opportunities, because the manager might be looking at it saying, actually, on the right, you're my best option. But when I referenced earlier on about Gassama and the winning team, one of the other guys in that winning team was Ant-Man. And one of the guys who continually, we were talking about players getting written off, right? I wrote Ant-Man off because I just thought this Scottish football doesn't really suit Ant-Man. I see somebody saying about Skov Olsen being pushed off the ball quite easily. His work rate's not particularly great as well. One of the things for me about Ant-Man is Ant-Man seems to be a player that prefers to run into the space. And actually playing the low block is something that he struggles with. And a bit like Skov Olsen, they tend to take the easy option and pass the ball back and so forth, right? But Ant-Man statistically is one of our best creative players when it's per minutes.
Yeah.
So actually, when you're talking about everyone chipping in, and we've spoken about Skov Olsen there's also the opportunity for Ant-Man to kick on. I think Ant-Man actually is one of these guys that come at the end of the season, you'll be like, he wasn't as bad as we thought he was. Not quite in the levels of Juanma Ortiz, but I do reckon there's a huge role for everyone to play. And let's hope at the end of the season we're talking about who chipped in, who's worth keeping next season, not just in terms of the loan players that are here, but everyone's playing for the position next year. Because let's be honest, if we do win the league, and with Olympiacos sitting second right now, if we do go directly into the Champions League, we have an opportunity to kick on. For me, this is a huge sliding door season, because if we do win the league and you do go into the Champions League, there's the funds that come with it, the opportunity to really improve the squad. Obviously, the reason it's a sliding doors moment is if you don't win it, you don't get that. So huge next 5 games for so many reasons, but hopefully everyone plays their part.
Comments on this are really interesting. So we've got some standard, he's been rotten, he's been pish, send him home. But I think we've got some guys in there that are saying they can see that there is remnants of a player there. He has a bit about him. I think the main problem, without going into the Danish winger thing, which everyone knows I've spoke about before, he just looks like a player that's bereft of the confidence that you need to be a winger or play in that position for Rangers. And if he doesn't have that, I think he's got a problem. I think he's got potential to be absolutely fantastic for us, frankly. However, I don't think it's unfair to say at the minute we've not seen it. So the next 5 games, I think, in answer to the question that I led with, or Laney indeed led with, was that we want him to be sort of up front and centre. We need him to be up front and centre. We need him to be firing. It's a big 5 games for him, I think. And it'll be really interesting just to find out how Skov Olsen fits into the jigsaw for the next 5 games. And it takes us nicely onto the next 5 games. Title of the podcast.
See before you go into the next 5 games, see the point there about that confidence that you've got. You need to be a very strong character playing for Rangers. I was at the Danny Rule Q&A at Ibrox, and I think I referenced this before on there was a question put to him about what's your fundamentals of a new signing, and he basically said big, strong and fast, right? So that was the kind of the physical elements that he touched on, and you can see that in the 4 new signings that we signed in January. But a separate question, I can't remember the question that was posed to him, but the response that he got was about bravery, and he wasn't talking about bravery in a challenge. It wasn't like a 50-50 and you're powering through the 50-50 to win the ball and you're Terry Butcher style with the bandage on your head with blood dripping down, right? It's the bravery of, you've got the ball, you've got to do something with that ball. And if you try to beat a man and you get tackled, your head doesn't go down. You try again, and you try again, and you try again. And it's the same with Shamiti up front as well. For example, if you hit the shot, it doesn't come off, you then don't shy away from the next shot. You need to keep going. And I think there's a big lesson being learned for our owners, and something that I think Danny Rule will be very aware of going into this summer. I think one of the big things that they'll be looking for as a profile of a player is that behaviour. They will be looking for who are the players that are going to be able to stand up and be counted at Ibrox and playing for a big club like Rangers. But I think it was John Brown in one of the speakers nights that I've been to. Sometimes you just can't. You can't predict that. you know, from conversations, from looking at players, because sometimes you're looking at players in smaller stadiums without the pressure of playing for Rangers in front of our fans, the expectations, and it's not until they pass the white lines at Ibrox that you suddenly go, yes, he's good enough, or no, he's not, from a behavioural perspective. So it's a very, very difficult one, but I do think the manager and the team around the manager are very well aware of the profile of player that they need to sign to be a success at Rangers.
On the using Skov Olsen as an example, you know, it'd be interesting to know if next season Danny Röhl is indeed interested in going with wingers, because we're not playing with wingers at the minute, which I don't think works for Skov Olsen, frankly. If he is a winger who is going to be a traditional stand on the touchline and beat a man, which I think we haven't seen so far. We know he can do it, but we've not seen it to date. If we're going to play with sort of two wide players, then I think he's good enough to be in that sort of conversation. However, if you're playing with two guys that are sitting narrow almost as inside forwards behind a two up top, I'm not sure Skov Olsen's that man either. So it'll be interesting to see how that all works. And it's one for the summer, and it's one to discuss, hopefully, as champions. We will get to that. Pod tonight is immediately quoted as being the post-split push. My goodness, it took me a wee while to get that out properly before we started. Let me tell you, Final Five is here. Now we know who's going to be going for the Diddy Cup to finish up the end of the season. We can focus on the last 5 games of the season. By the way, I have to say, Davey Heard said in the chat today that he's potentially going to move into Europe for about 3 weeks, so we don't have to enjoy the loving that is going to be on the run-up to that Scottish Cup semi-final. My goodness, get your earplugs in for that. The final 5 are here: Motherwell at home, Hearts away, Celtic away, Hibs at home, and Falkirk away. Rob, where can it be won?
Hibs at home, of course. That's the ideal scenario, isn't it? That turns into party night. To be honest, mate, I don't think any fan at the moment is thinking of where it can be won. We're all just looking at Motherwell. Yeah. You know, ultimately, it is just simply knocking each of those fixtures away one by one and getting too excited and ahead of it just now and too emotional. If we do take a little bit of a speed bump in the running, isn't it going to do us any favours? Because, to use the age-old thing that we always talk about, there will be a couple of twists as we go through the next 5 fixtures. You know, there's an Edinburgh derby that Hearts could potentially drop points in. We've obviously got an Old Firm. You know, Motherwell, Falkirk are going to be a bit annoyed at the fact that they choked on a semi-final to make a final for the Scottish Cup. You know, the way this season has gone, I don't see any team winning 5 games. But the great thing is, like we've said since, you know, the last 4 or 5 weeks, it's in our hands now. Yeah. You know, we don't need any team to be doing us any favours. All we need to do is focus fully 100% on Motherwell coming up and knock them off. Once we knock Motherwell off, it's then Hearts, and what a great opportunity that is to then go top of the league and you know, get a bit of clearance between us and Hearts if we can put them away on that Monday night game. And then it's Celtic, and you know, the last time we went there, we beat them 3-1. So, you know, it's not as if we can't do that again. Ideally, would you want that to be the title decider? Could you imagine it for the fans that are going to be inside that stadium? That would be a phenomenal way to finish the season. But, you know, for me, I am genuinely meaning this. It's just all about Motherwell. Doesn't mean I don't feel positive and confident about the remaining games. You know, if you look at it, Rangers are in really good form. You know, we've come back from a long way. We're scoring goals. Yeah, we're conceding some stupid ones, but ultimately, as long as the players have got the right attitude and approach to these games, I don't think we've got anything to fear. And the great thing was, in listening, or not listening, but reading the Raskin comments, but also in the Tav interview that's been in the Rangers review, the managers, I think, got into the heads of a lot of these players, you know, because of his approach to things. He doesn't get too high with the highs and he doesn't get too lows with the lows. He seems to be a pretty calming influence. And that's what you need for your manager. And I think a lot of the players are really appreciating that. You know, where us as fans, we get really emotional. If it's a draw, it's an absolute disaster. We really focus on those lost 2 points. And for the manager to be able to go in and reset them, and, you know, that's how you build togetherness. If he's approachable and players know that he's always going to have their back, then they'll go. And go to war for him on his behalf. And I think that's one of the things that we'll see hopefully over the next 5 games is that togetherness from the players. You know, we saw it with the wee Rami against Falkirk. You know, how many times have we seen a situation like that and there's been no Rangers player that has gone in and got involved and backed up their teammate like that? And to me, that's a really good sign for the next 5 games, because there will be times where we'll play some really good football, but it's also going to be times where it balls out defending, throwing yourself in front of the ball, making that last ditch tackle, taking a yellow card for the team, because it's not about the individual. You check that ego. It's about the team and what you can do to help the team to get over the line. Motherwell is the first game, but this is what being a football fan's about. It's exciting. You know, when's the last time we felt like this? The last 5 games of the league.
I mean, and I think that's a great point. And I think I've said previously that this is what this sort of split is effectively all about. I think what we've seen previously, we know various sort of points in the last wee while, there's been a bigger gap that's appeared in that sort of last 5 games. Very rarely have we went into this last 5 games and it's been as tight as it is. Certainly I don't think it's ever been with 3 teams, certainly, but with 2. So it's going to be an interesting, really. I just, everyone's got the potential to cut everyone's throat at it effectively, Sheryl. Now, Natalie, who is a regular on the show, watching on X, and this is an interesting one because I think people will share this to a degree. If we don't win the league from here, it's been an absolute failure of a season. Now, we are sort of, I believe, listed as favourites to go on and win it with some sort of bookmakers up and down the country. Is that comment fair based on how the season was initially, do you think?
I don't agree, no. I absolutely get where Natalie's coming from, but I don't agree in the sense of how piss poor we were up until October, November time. And I think the fact that Danny Rulle's got us to where we are now is incredible. I get where she's coming. Ultimately, we leave the season with nothing, which is never, ever acceptable. But I think from where we were to where we are now and the kind of turnaround, and I think a big thing that I was thinking when Rob was talking there, for me, and I know we all have at various times over the season, a lot of questions, or at least about the beginning of some questions, were answered with that second half at Falkirk around mentality. That's always been the huge worry for me around this team and around their ability to pass these big tests. And here they are, they're coming at us now, and I just feel that we're really, really lucky from where we were to be in this position now. So I get it, it's never okay for us to finish the season with nothing, but I think we've just been so poor. I mean, some of the dross that we were watching, some of the players that we had to watch, I'll not even mention the previous manager, but it was awful. So I think to get back to where we are now, I think there's been progress. I think as well, I seen something today around the expected goals from, I think it was from January onwards now, what is it, 3.6? Whereas I think it was something like 1.6. Like even that's incredible, the work that he's done. It's shoring up the defence a bit. We are still shipping goals, but at least we're scoring goals, and we're scoring more goals than the 2 teams around us. But I think for me, the big thing is mentality. And we've seen that in that second half, because like Dougie, I know there was calls for that. For me, calls for Danny Rule's head is absolutely ridiculous, but I understood why people were as angry as they were. But that second half showed us that, yes, when their backs are against this wall, that there is characters within that team that can drive us forward, which is something we've worried about pretty much all of the season. And I think that's going to be a huge factor, which maybe ties into the trip away to Spain as well. But to echo what Rob said, it's Motherwell. Looking at Motherwell, I don't think, I'll not mention the sensationalist X-poster that I seen. He's certainly not on this pod. But it was win or bust. I don't think so. I think, like Rob says, there's going to be wee twists and turns. There's going to be things happening around us. There's maybe going to be a draw, but it's such an exciting thing to be part of. And I love it for the wee guys that we've got around us as well. Like my son is absolutely obsessed with all the different fixtures, the scores, like loads of wee guys around his age were around for 55 but don't remember it as well. And like you said, Scott, we've not had this for ages and ages. And I know I've digressed from kind of Natalie's point in the question that you'd asked me. I understand why people think it would be a failure of a season. It always is when we win nothing. But I think from where we've come from and the progress that we've made under Danny Rule, it would give me at least signs of optimism for what would come next season. But we won't have to worry about that anyway.
Dougie, Facebook viewer, Phil, I assume that's Phil Buckle. I don't know. We've only lost 2 matches in the league so far. We've got every right to be quite confident going into these last 5, do we not?
Well, the draws has been the problem. We need, it's been about turning those draws into wins. But I think somebody put it in the comments on YouTube not too long ago in terms of one of the biggest differences in recent games is just the goals scored. The chances being created, we are putting them in. There's more chances being created leading to more goals. It's a pretty obvious thing, right? Sheryl referenced the XG under Russell Martin. There was points at the beginning of the season where there was only ever one guy in the box. And, I still play amateur football and I still try and play amateur football, right? I'm 41 years old and pretending to myself loosely. But everyone knows you get more chances to score if you get more guys in the box. And that's been a big change for me under Danny Rule, and I think that's where we're starting to turn those points into wins. I'm sitting in a confident position right now because I back my team. We're in a good position, we're in a good run of form, but it's a very, very fragile season. All it takes is drop points against Motherwell and the whole mood changes. And it's not over because there's going to be many more twists and turns. As I said in the last pod, Scott, that we had together, no team has ever won all 5 post-split fixtures. So with that in mind, there's an expectation that everybody is going to drop points. So it's about how you react to that. So we shouldn't be hitting the panic mode if we drop points to Motherwell. But the point still stands. If we do, the whole mood in the camp changes. So we've got a bit of confidence right now. Completely agree with the whole sentiment of the pod. It's the next game that's the most important. So you go into Motherwell, you get your 3 points, you regroup, you recharge, and you go into the next game. And that's how you win leagues. Focus on one game at a time. I'm probably a bit different to Sheryl in terms of the mindset, right? Because I'm of the mindset that any season trophy list at Rangers is a failure. My mindset right now is what's happened has happened. We're now over the Russell Martin shambles that was the beginning of the season. Danny Rule has built this new team together. He's built a team where they're all fighting for each other. They all know their roles. We're creating more chances. We're scoring more goals. We're in a very good position, and it will be very disappointing to me if we don't win the league. That's my view. I'll be disappointed if we don't win the league. But having said that, the sensationalist comments about if we don't win the league, you've got to sack Danny Rule. I am not there because we are in this position because of Danny Rule. So actually, you've got to back this man and back his team in the summer to go again. But hopefully, he's the man that takes us to 56. And as I said earlier on, huge sliding doors moment. You win the league this season, and I genuinely believe that we kick on. And this is the whole, Steven Gerrard's comments after 55 about, fixing the roof when the sun is shining. If we win the league this season, I'll tell you right now, we will kick on. And I'm confident that we'll go on and we'll win the league again next season because of the momentum and everything that will come with winning the league this year. But for now, win Motherwell. That's it. Just keep winning your next game, and hopefully when we're together next Sunday, we're talking about an important 3 points. And listen, we'll look about at the other fixtures as well come next week, because it's at this stage of the season, whilst somebody referenced earlier on, it is about us. If we win all our 5 games, we win the league. The excitement of this season and the excitement of being in 5 games left is all those twists and turns. When we're sitting there in Motherwell on Sunday, correct me if I'm wrong, Celtic and Hearts have played their game on Saturday, right? Yeah. So we'll know going into that game on Sunday, a bit like the Falkirk game, where we stand. We did our job because we spoke before the Falkirk game, Scott, of, we were actually corrected. It's once in January, all 3 teams had won in the same match day weekend. So we were corrected. It happened once in January. But we had said that if Hearts and Celtic both win, there's a lot of pressure on us to go and win on Sunday, because it has been one of those seasons where it's been a rarity that all 3 win. we'll know again on Sunday what we need to do, and hopefully supporters inside Ibrox, we know the importance of 3 points, because hopefully one of the other two drop points. And right now, that for me, I love this season. I genuinely think it's a brilliant season, and I think it'd be a brilliant Netflix documentary. Of skinny dipping in Loch Lomond when you're sitting second bottom in the league, 13 points behind Hearts at one point to get on and win in the league. What a story it would be. Let's hope that we're telling it come May.
Just on that point, Scotty, sorry mate, before we move on, it doesn't really matter what we think about this season. The only thing that matters is what the manager and players think, and I think the great thing is the manager has been fairly vocal when he's been asked about it, that none of this matters if they don't go on and finish the job, and that's the mentality they need. Players, they can't think, oh, we've done such a great job to get back into contention, this is brilliant. The manager will be pushing them to say, your job's only half done. None of this hard work matters if you don't get it over the finishing line now. And that's the attitude that we want to see for the players. It's great that he's done a great job to get us back into this position, but the job is only half done, and if they don't finish it, they'll be living with that regret. They're never going to have a better opportunity to go and turn the screw and win a league with the momentum that we've got going into these last 5 games compared to how some of the other teams are playing. And that's the thing I really want to see for the players. Again, us as fans, we're always going to say a trophyless season is a disaster, but it's more the attitude of the players getting into this as your job's not done. Yeah, just because you're 1 point behind the league leaders at the split after being 13 points behind, none of that matters. You've got 5 more games to go, and you need to be at least 1 point ahead now. And that's the yardstick for us. Whatever they need to do to get over the line in these next 5 games is what they've got to do.
Do you know? For me, and Cubby's absolutely right. The trip to Tynecastle and the trip to their place across the city will decide where the title ends up. I think generally will decide where the title ends up. By the way, if it's not going to be us, if it's going to be Hearts. If it's going to be them, I think it's easy to rule them out, frankly, at the minute, just because we want to. We don't want to think about them winning it. Of course we don't. But Cubby's absolutely right. And the one thing that I would say as well, and I think everyone knows where I stand on this, I've said it before, Rangers managers who don't win trophies don't last long. And that is just the way of it, whether we like it or not. Managers at our club who don't win shiny things don't stay in the building for particularly very long. I did say
on that as well.
Yes,
you go back to old firm games as well. Managers who don't win old firm games don't last long either. And that was always the pressure under Big Phil, is that inability to beat Celtic. That's the thing for me about Danny Rule. We went to Celtic Park. We had that big, huge second half performance, which has galvanised everyone in terms of we can go to Celtic Park and we can beat them. And that's proven by that game this season with this current group of players and this current manager. We should be taking a lot of confidence. The players, the management should be taking a lot of confidence by some of the precedent that we have set this season alone. And for me, Rob was talking about the attitude of the manager. There's so many things about this manager right now that I'm really liking. If I'm honest, I've been critical of him at certain points. I didn't like some of his subs. I was questioning some of the tactical decisions he was making. But see the Raskin comments about the very kind of flat mood, not having the highs and the lows. When you win, it's just another game. When you lose, it's like right on to the next game. That's what you need to win leagues. You need to be just focused on the next game and then have your party at the end of the season. I think Danny Rule, at 36 years old, if he goes on and wins the league this season, I think we could have a very successful period with this manager.
36, ages with Sheryl. So what I'm going to ask in a minute, and I did say at the start of the podcast, by the way, that I wasn't going to throw you under the bus. Not entirely true. I am going to ask you all in a second who your player of the season has been to date, and also what your moment of the season has been to date. I'm going to speak a wee bit about our sponsors, so I'll give you time to think about it. We should say thanks to our sponsors who look after us for the duration of the season: Rhino Express, Cliveview Joinery, Athlone Industrial Solutions, CSD Air Conditioning, Arts of Gold, Black Rooster, and Candid. If you are not following us on social media, you're doing it wrong. We're on X, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. We're also on Threads, which was a thing, remember? If you are not following us there, please do it. Please like, comment, and subscribe to everything that we do. But importantly, subscribe so you do get a wee notification every time we release some content. Sheryl.
Yep, I'll go first, right? And I tell you why I can, right? Because obviously I was away with my son for a wee while, and then we had a wee period in the middle of the holidays where he went away and he went down south, and and he came back, and I think he was away for something like 4 or 5 days. So we'd saved up 4 or 5 days worth of conversation just to hit me with, but it was all about Rangers related stuff. So every time we went out for a dog walk, it would be like, right, I want your moment of the season, right, I want your player of the season. So I've already done this every single time I've been walking my dog. And whilst in my head I was thinking, please be quiet, I'm now glad that he's done it because I'm ready for this moment.
Player of the season so far, on you go.
Player of the season for me, and I think you could either do young player of the season because he would be both. I think it needs to be Mikey Moore for me. Yeah, Mikey Moore Fernandez. But at the end pushed me on that because said, no, you're not allowed to. So I'll go for Mikey Moore for player of the season for me.
And your moment of the season up to now?
Up to now, you touched on it about 2 minutes ago. It was that second half performance at Parkhead. The tweaks, the tactical tweaks that Danny Rule made, because up until then, I know a lot of people, the jury was out on him, but I think that showed me that actually he can, and he's not actually done it too often, but he can change a game in the second half with his subs when he needs to and with his tactics when he needs to. And that was just magnificent because nobody seen it coming because we were so poor that first half. So that's the moment for me.
Good answers. I like it. Right, who's getting launched into the bus next? Robert, player of the season to now?
I'll be slightly different. I'll go Manny Fernandez. I think he pips it over Mikey Moore for me, to be honest, because I think he's turning into a leader in the team. For me, you see him having a go at players and dragging people up, and actually the improvement from him has been nigh on remarkable since he's come into the team. Him and Jiga formed a fantastic partnership, and who would have thought that it was the Scottish international that was always the problem in our defensive line with those two players. But without Suter sitting next to them, they look like a brilliant partnership and brilliant players. And I anticipate we are going to make a fortune for Manny Fernandez when he eventually is sold, and it's going to be more than 25 million, Dougie.
Did you not slag me for saying that we'll make a fortune from Manny Fernandez?
No, I slagged you for saying. I slagged you for saying it was only going to be 25 million because you were trying to sell him on the cheap. Exactly, mate.
I'll be brutally honest with you, it's kind of hard. We've got a whole list of slaggings that you take on a Sunday night. It's hard to just sort of get which one we're talking about. Rob, moment of the season up to now?
So it's quite a surreal moment of the season that I'm going to pick, actually, because it was the Chermiti goal against Celtic, overhead kick. Yep. But it was more for the fact that I was jumping about mad in the hospitality with Michael Moll celebrating the goal at the time. So it was quite a surreal moment there to be hugging him and his son after Chermiti scored an overhead kick. So that one for me.
T Deacon entirely agrees with you. Chermiti's overheader has to be a moment of the season. Douglas, same two questions to you, buddy.
Right, my player of the season. I'm going to briefly digress and talk about the PFA Team of the Year as voted for by the fellow professionals. Only one Rangers player got in that team, and it's Big Manny Fernandez. So for me, Manny Fernandez is the one who gets my player of the season. But I look at it and I say, who else in our team deserves to be in contention for the team of the season for the Scottish Premiership? And for me, it's probably only Mikey Moore that is in contention to be in that team of the season. Obviously, that might change between now and the end of the year if Miovski goes in an amazing goal scoring run between now and the end of the year. It might change, but for me, there's only kind of two names in that mix to actually be in the team of the season. It's because of the inconsistency in some players. It's because of the start of the season we had. But for me, the growth from Manny Fernandez is huge, and I would give it to him for that reason. And he's our own player. Sorry, Sheryl, I'd give it to Fernandez because he's our signing. moment of the season, I'm going to be controversial. Our moment of the season sacking Russell Martin.
Yeah, 100%.
So do you remember, right? Because you slaughtered me for this, and I'm going to kick myself out. I'm going to get slaughtered at the end of the season anyway if it doesn't come up, right? But the day that we sacked Russell Martin, I stuck a tenner on Rangers winning the league.
That's right.
That's how important I thought that moment was. We can look at moments in the games. Sharmiti's overhead kick is one of the best goals I've ever seen in the flesh. Unreal. The comeback against Celtic at Celtic Park actually switched the game off at one point. And then all of a sudden we scored and the game's back on again. But for me, the fundamental moment of the season was getting rid of Russell Martin. And that's been the turning point. That and appointing Danny Rule. But that change in managerial stewardship has been the turning point for me this season. And hopefully, hopefully Danny Rule is the man to take us over the line. I was distracted by somebody asking me what the odds were. To be fair, the odds weren't that great. My odds were something like 12. It was 12 or 13 to 1. And that was when we were 8th or 9th in the league. But it was more the principle so that I could say I firmly believed that we had a very good squad. And I said it time and time again and got slaughtered for it. I didn't think the players were as bad as what the score lines, the position, the performances suggested. And dare I say, Danny Rule has been able to work with that limited squad that it was there and get them to a position where we could win a league. So, like, from hating a team at the beginning of the season, this could be the team that goes on and wins the league. And here's this for a question, right, to all the listeners, right? The team that won 55, we absolutely worshipped that team. You know, I remember I was in a different podcast at that point, and I remember we did a player of the season. We need to ask Stevie, right, if we do a young player of the season, a player of the season, goal of the season award, because we did it in our previous podcast where we actually gave it to the players. And I actually had a deciding vote in 55 as to who to give it to. And I kid you not, right? It was a tie amongst McGregor, Tav, Davis, and Goldson in that one season at how good so many players were. And that wasn't even considering the importance of, you know, Alfredo Morelos, Kemar Roof, you know, all these guys in the top end of the pitch. We had so many guys that were dragging us to that league title. Scott Arfield was in my shout as well.
Yep.
We don't have that this season. It's a really, really bizarre season. You know, you're talking about PFA Team of the Year and who's our Player of the Year. It's not the same as the 55 in terms of, like, I love that team. I've got the signed jersey up the stairs in my office. You know, I love that team. I don't feel that same connection to this team. Hopefully, when we do win the league, that changes, and, you know, I'll get a signed Manny Fernandez or Mikey Moore top of my wall.
And if we don't win the league, it's Dougie that's jinxed it because he's been talking about his bet on live on air. So everybody can direct their ire at CF3 Loyal on Twitter. Should we not win the league?
Just like you did for St Mirren this afternoon as well, El Scuddo.
Listen, I turned on the telly for the last 10 minutes of that game and I thought, geez, St Mirren are playing really, really well. They score the goal, and I put it in the chat to say, bloody hell, what a goal that was. Everyone then tunes in and Celtic start pumping them, and I'm like, right, that's it, back off. I'm going out of the garden again to sunbathe.
Do you know that way? So he's probably, if I was being brutally honest, he's have covered probably what my two answers are. I think our Player of the Year up to now simply has to be Manny Fernandez. I think he's had a cracking season. I think if Romans had arrived now, he would have been in that discussion. I think if Jigga started as he's been playing recently, he would be in that discussion. I think Mikey Moore has to be in around it, so I don't disagree. The biggest moment, and the two, and you guys have mentioned them, the Sharmiti overhead kick in the Old Firm game is probably one of the best goals I've ever seen live. But I think more importantly was Andrew Kavanagh pulling the button, or pushing the button rather, on Russell Martin. I don't think it should be forgot about the two clowns that went shortly after as well, who weren't doing their job properly, to be perfectly frank. And I think Andrew Kavanagh deserves a huge amount of credit. I actually said I was on Sports Sound a couple of weeks ago, and I said that he's someone who actually deserves to have that shiny trophy on his desk come the end of the season, because it's been difficult for him. I think he'd be the first to admit that it has been a bit of learning for him just coming in the door. He's had to make big decisions really early in his ownership at Ibrox, I think. And And while I think you could probably argue that the Russell Martin one was made a little bit later than it should have been, it was eventually made. And as I say, he made 2 big decisions shortly after that, which I think have been quite pivotal this season, to be perfectly honest with you.
Scott, seeing you said about Andrew Kavanagh there, I genuinely thought you were going to say January transfer window, because the other big moment of the season is the fact that the checkbook out. You know, you look at the importance of some of these guys. We're talking about the importance of getting Romans back into a team. You've said yourself, if he was here from the beginning of the season, he might be up for Player of the Year. We signed well in January. We backed the manager. That's another crucial part of this season. I do still go back to the Russell Martin sacking as a crucial part, but actually you're absolutely spot on with the backing of Andrew Kavanagh. You know, the 2 big moments for me was getting rid of the manager and then the January recruitment. That was Andrew Kavanagh growing a set of boys and doing the right thing. The tough decision, but he made them.
Aye, absolutely. Listen, I genuinely didn't think we would have got 56 minutes out of a podcast, but it's you.
56 minutes, Scott. Oh, that's
just done it. It's purely by chance, by the way, I assure you. Dougie, good to have you on, buddy. Welcome back. Thank you.
Good to be on. Incredible how we all talk so much, but it's good to be on with everyone. It's been a while since the 4 of us were back on. 3 lads and a lassie. And hopefully next week when we're all back on together, we're talking about being top of the league.
Absolutely.
Aye, Captain.
Aye, Captain. Sheryl, good to have you on. Thank you.
Thank you, but I wouldn't be with you.
Oh,
I'm off to Player of the Year.
Oh, my goodness.
Couldn't you get a table with us so you ditched us?
I said to you there was. I thought there was still tickets, but no, I won't be. I'll maybe do a wee live broadcast or something like that. I'll try and sneak. Aye.
As you get huckled away in the police car.
Yes.
Mr. Roman says you're making him feel uncomfortable.
Brilliant. Rob, good to have you on, buddy. Thank you for joining us as always.
Always good to be on with the crew and Dougie.
Poor Dougie, goodness me. So as always, as you can probably expect, as we look ahead to the game next weekend, 4 Lads will have a full quota of podcasts happening from tomorrow night and for the duration of the week. Please join the guys from tomorrow onwards. They will be on at their usual times, usual faces, usual names, and they will no doubt entertain you between now and the weekend before we do it again next weekend. If you can afford me, one final thing I would like to say, a good friend of mine returns to the airwaves over the weekend after a short period away. I would just like to say welcome back to Kenny Mack. I know he's had a difficult time, but it's great to hear him back in the airwaves. I think if you know him, if you've been in his company, it's good to have him back in and about it. Rob, you're back next week to host the guys, minus Sheryl by all accounts, which is an absolute bombshell. However,
I'm not coming on now either.
You weren't invited, Dougie.
So I am back 2 weeks from now, which will almost be the final Sunday show hosted by me before the end of the season. So we look forward to that. It's going to be an exciting next 5 games. Stay with them, stay involved, get yourself along to the games, make sure they're for the full 90 minutes. And hopefully, we're going into these 5 cup finals and we can look at them with a bit of confidence. So if you have joined tonight and you've got involved in the comments, we're grateful for that. Don't forget to like and subscribe, comment when you can, and join the guys for the build up to Motherwell from tomorrow evening. Thanks for watching. Good night.
The 4 Lads podcast is sponsored by Rhino Express, Clydeview Joinery, Athol Industrial Solutions Limited, and CSD Air Conditioning, in partnership with Black Rooster and Art of Gold. Thank you for listening to or watching the podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show.